I am thoroughly looking forward to this panel. I have an unhealthy interest in the logistics of aviation. I think that just about everybody here will agree that the whole thing really, I mean, the previous panel is how you pay for it and how you deal with it. And the CEOs is all about the strategy. But the people on our panel now are the ones who actually make it happen. The operational bit, the COOs of the industry. Dorota Dmuchowska is the COO from LOT Polish. Good to have you with us. George Kamal, the COO of Kenya Airways, and Isidre Porqueras, COO of IndiGo. I think the first part, because different airlines regard the COO in a different, not hugely different ways, but each of you give me an idea of the range of responsibilities you have, so that we get an idea of, within your airline, what is considered to be the role of the COO. Start with you, Isidre, since you're our host. Give us an idea.
Thanks, first of all, for inviting us. And the role of the CEO is a complex one, as you said. It's the most brutal, just-in-time production that we have, right? Every day, for instance, we put 420,000 seats on the air every single day, right? And as that, different airlines organize themselves in different ways, but they tend to think on a simplified picture. Network planning designs what needs to be flown, commercial sells the tickets for these, destinations, and then operations take care of everything else. From the moment the passenger turns in at the airport until the moment the passenger leaves the destination airport. In a particular case, we have everything related to pilots, cabin crew, maintenance, engineering, airport infrastructures. Some airlines, depending on the size, have fleet management under operations or outside of operations. In our particular case, because of the size, fleet management is outside of operations.
George.
Similar case, and
well,
people take...
Give us, maybe then, what's not in your portfolio?
What is not on my portfolio is finance, HR, and what else? Finance and HR are the main.
So you have engineering?
Engineering, MRO, flight crew, cabin crew. We have supply chain, fleet, and as Sid said, it's usually different airlines, different approach, and the ground handling as well. So it depends on the approach of the airline. However, people take this job for granted. When everything is normal, it's good, and they don't see. But COO's role is major and crucial for any airline.
Oh, I mean, it's the linchpin in a sense, isn't it, of the airline? You make the thing run. Give us an idea a lot. Again, what's in your portfolio?
It's similar as my colleague said. I also have all the matters regarding crews, maintenance, ground handling, fuel efficiency, and fuel procurement is also in my department. I don't have fleet, commercial, finance, and HR. Partly also it is in the operations, because we recruit crews within the operations.
All right. So, bearing in mind the huge range of things in your portfolios, you sort of sit at the top of a pyramid of a lot of moving parts. Which bit of it do you spend most of your time on?
Crews is the significant. The crewing is the significant part of of my concern, because it's a rare good at the market at the moment, the pilots especially, but also the everyday operations.
But what does that mean? Because give us an idea of what it means. Because when you say everyday operations, I have a vision of somebody telling you that the flight to New York is delayed for X, Y, Z. But obviously you can't be that sort of micro to the airline.
No, but I have a general overview over also daily operations. If something happens, you know, the big part of our job is taking care of the safety of the operations and the safety of the whole network and the whole chain of the operation. So whenever something goes not right, I'm not saying wrong or unsafe, we are aware of it. So I think we are maybe not micromanaging, but keeping an eye on everything.
What do you spend most of your time on?
Ground handling starting from the airport, where you see the customer.
No, but on a daily basis.
On a daily basis.
When you go in the morning and you sit down at your desk, and for the next 8 to 10 hours, what will you usually have spent most time on?
The first thing is to look at the plan. Is it going as planned? Is the day going for me as planned? Is the strategic plan is working, or do we have to replan again? And what Dorota was saying is similar to all of us on a daily basis. So you have to go one by one to ensure that the plan is running as it should be running for the day of the operation. And do you need a strategic change on the short-term or mid-term plan impact? Is this impacting your plan? So this is what we usually look at. Additionally, the MRO. MRO is a big portfolio to look at because of the spare parts and all of this, which we can discuss later.
How difficult has it been lately with supply chain issue? I mean, I'm going to answer my own question. It's been very difficult. So just in case I say that just in case you were going to try and bamboozle me and say, oh no, it's been straightforward. Just how difficult?
No, it's not straightforward. Actually, it's what I spend most of my time trying to manage supply chain issues, no? And
what does that mean? Give me an example.
Fleet. Do we have sufficient aircraft? Are we going to have the right delivery of the aircraft? How do we deal with the engine problems? How we keep the 400 plus aircraft that we have flying, minimizing the number of aircraft on the ground? This is, to me, supply chain. Something that, in COVID, we started in 19, we thought it's going to be a 3-year problem. Now we are 5 years later. And if you ask me, still in for the long run. At least in the next 2-3 years, we're still going to have issues to sustain the capacity and to keep the aircraft flying.
But at the end, what about yourselves? Kind of same sort of things, supply chain issues?
Same sorts of things we are facing, and I think all the airlines, regardless of the number of aircrafts, you still have supply chain issues with engines or with the aircraft itself.
The problem is there's not much you can do about it. If you haven't got the engine, I mean, you can sort of, pardon the phrase, kick the cat, but it's not, you're not suddenly going to have an engine. So then you have to start trying to find another aircraft, lease an aircraft, do this, change the schedule. What do you do in those scenarios as the COO?
Okay, first thing we do, we look at our network.
I'm sorry?
We look at our network, our current network, to adapt the current fleet which is available to the network we have. This is as a mitigation action. The second thing is we look for other aircrafts to lease an engine, to get an engine to get the aircraft up in the air, or to get an ACMI to fly those routes. That's the easiest way. Planning is crucial. If we plan a little bit earlier, so we have spare engines available or we have a spare parts available, not all of us have the ability to do so because of the cash constraints as well. However, that's what we try to plan ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's the
Speak up.
most... Speak up?
Yes.
That's the most important thing, to plan ahead and to try to, proactively find out what may happen. So proactive maintenance predictive maintenance is something that we are doing.
But isn't a large part of your job, I'm going to be slightly unkind here, isn't a large part of the job the result of when that hasn't happened and it's gone wrong? Therefore, it's a case of, I wish we had done that sooner, but we didn't, and now I've got to deal with it.
Sometimes it is, but we learn from such situations and we try to avoid mistakes in the future. So, we treat every such situation as a lesson for the future. And we always try to have a plan B. If we don't have an engine, we see if we don't have any aircraft in heavy maintenance, and we can, borrow an engine from these aircraft and put it on the flying one. So it's many solutions, and we always have some kind of a plan B. And the crucial point is to have a good team under you, especially in operations, because they do magical things sometimes to keep aircraft flying.
Can you feel your fellow COOs or your other airlines all doing the same thing? Can you feel, for example, that everybody's looking for engines? That suddenly we need an engine and I just can't, or the chief engineer comes up to you and says, I just can't find an engine. And you think that's because has got it and they're going after it and they're wanting them as well.
Definitely today, engines in this market is the most sought after asset, right? And it's getting to a situation that people are making complex decisions to understand, like parting out aircraft that are 6 years old because they see more value on the engines than in the actual aircraft. This is to the extent it reached. And definitely today, engines and spare engines are the kings.
Has anybody managed to explain to your satisfaction the problem with engines?
Well, if you ask me, there have been so many attempts, so many times over the years that still need to get to what's the real thing.
Yes, they explained, and the major problem we can see today for our engines is the turnaround time. The turnaround time increased significantly, and this also impacts. So you have about 70 or 80 engines in a waiting list to go to the shop. You get the timing, you get everything, but they are still stacked to go to the shop, and it takes, instead of taking 70 days or 80 days, now it takes 120 plus to get out of the shop. So this is number one. Number two, the cost increased significantly for the engines to go to the shop if it goes for a full overhaul.
And the supply chain issues, because if you don't have a spare parts, the shop visits takes forever, and the engine just sits there and waits for the parts, and it is being frustrating for us.
I think there are two factors into this. One is that the new engine technology delivers much better fuel efficiency, but there is no free lunch. To get that much better fuel efficiency, the engineering has been pushed to the limit. So these engines do not sustain as much time on wing as the previous generation. Actually, we are removing them earlier than the OEM decided. That puts increased pressure on the number of turnarounds in the shops. That's the first factor. The second factor is that on top of having to do more turnarounds, you have shortage of spares. And this is the perfect storm that's hitting aviation. Engines that are lasting less than they were planned for, and a supply chain that cannot cope with the need for those overhauls.
That's pretty basic. I mean,
It's
sounds
very simple.
Sounds basic, yeah.
no, what I mean is, upon this entire industry, this trillion-dollar industry of revenues, you can't get the most important thing, the thing that makes the thing get into the air. And it keeps cocking up. That's pretty, don't you think so?
It is frustrating, as I said, but I don't know how you guys, but I see that it is picking up a little bit with the engine manufacturers and the shop's capability. I don't know what is your experience, but our experience for the past 2 years, it has picked up.
You're not so sure.
It's still
You're
not
not so sure.
satisfactory.
You're hedging.
I have the privilege of having had the largest number of aircraft on the ground for many months, right? So from that
How many?
perspective, as Peter was telling yesterday, at the peak we had almost 70 aircraft on the ground. Now
70?
70, yeah, 70. Now we are in the mid-40s. True that it's getting better, but the plans that we are giving for the next years, probably because the OEM are being more prudent, are extending the times.
Right, so each time, again, this is why I love this discussion, because it's all nuts and bolts. How quickly do you realize that you're going to end up with another aircraft on the ground? I mean, you're hoping that aircraft's going to go in for maintenance, and you're hoping that the engine's going to be back in 60 days, 90 days, but suddenly you find it's 150 days or whatever. Therefore, you've got to completely redo the whole schedule of what that aircraft was going to do.
Yeah. We basically have a half a year visibility of what's going, half a year visibility of what's going to happen. 6 months in advance, I know that one aircraft is going to get in AOG because the supply of the engines is not going to work. Again, for us, it's a different problem because we have so many aircraft and so many engines that is more a portfolio management. For some other lines, may be different.
Can you feel that some of your rival carriers are getting preferential treatment?
Yes.
You know, can you think, that engine should have been mine? That should have been back last week. It went to them. And yes.
Yes.
You're nodding.
We have those discussions with the OEMs, and we ask them why they don't share this unhappiness equally among their clients, and they say that this is very complicated system of distributing the engines, and that they analyze it very carefully, and they allocate the engine to the given airline, taking many things into consideration. They have not explained it to my satisfaction so far. Yes, sometimes I feel that the engine should be mine, but instead it went somewhere else.
Definitely, yes, because with the smaller carriers, usually with the lower number of engines than the smaller carriers, you see that happens a lot. You see that this engine should have been, we should have taken this engine, and unfortunately it just goes to a different.
I think on a personal level, we all would feel that actually we are not giving the right priority. But if we try to step back a bit, I think that the OEMs are trying their best to equalize the pain.
Oh, no. You're just trying to suck up to them, hoping that if there's one of them in the audience, they're going to go, right, she shit-bagged me, so she's not getting an engine. He was nice to me. He's getting his engine back early.
I'm not as nice to them as to the panel.
Right.
On a daily basis, we are not that nice.
All right. So that's the engine part. But then, of course, you have the really difficult bit, which is the crewing, pilot crewing, cabin crew. Which are more difficult, the pilots or the cabin crew?
Depends on which aspect.
Who are more troublesome?
It's a very
The answer is that it depends. It depends on where you are, right? You know, here in India, we have the privilege of have very good supply and very talented pilots and very talented cabin crews. Here in India, always pilots are going to be more complex. In previous life in France, I would always say that even cabin crew were as complex as pilots. So as I say, it depends a bit.
It's usually the pilots because the type of training they get, the type of experience they need, and the time they need to get their license and training is longer, much longer.
What about the ego?
Okay. It can be for both sides. However, definitely, there is the commandability of the pilots raises a bit of the ego. That's understandable in some case. Yes, we have a little bit of issues definitely with numbers of pilots, availability. We have some issues with the unions, social partners, which impact us and impact the operation significantly as well.
The complexity of putting together. People always ask me, why do I like aviation? And one of the reasons why I like covering it is, I always give the answer, you've got to get the right plane with the right crew and the right passengers, with the right meals and the right hours of the passengers and the right luggage at the right gate at the right time in the right slot. And that's just a few of the things. But you don't just have to do it once, you have to do it hundreds of times a day if you're a very large carrier, or all of you, for that. In that chain, what is the most difficult to get right?
For us, it would be the slots and air traffic management at the moment in Europe. I think it's very challenging, and it may ruin your whole day of operations if the first wave is delayed. So this is I think the most difficult problem at the moment for us. And after that, everything falls apart. the crew rosters, the network, and it's just like the house of cards.
Right, but you're at the top of the pyramid in a sense of all these responsibilities. At what point would the operations desk, the operation room, the crew, whatever, at what point would they call you and say, we're going to have a really bad day today, or things are not looking good?
It's every morning, basically, we have a briefing, the operations briefing, and with the operations center and all the stakeholders, like the maintenance and stuff, and we are looking ahead for, how the day will look like. And then we know if, we think we know how it will go during the day, because sometimes, it's just...
What of the whole chain that I outlined, what's the most challenging for yourself?
I think that of the whole chain, airlines have become very proficient in making sure the aircraft is at the right place with the crews, with the meals, all that is sorted. Based also on comments by the panel, the most difficult part are the things that are outside our control.
Yeah.
Is the aircraft going to be parked at the right gate? Are we going to get the right slot to depart? How these delays are going to propagate through the day, and at what point in time we have to intervene to change the program, because the accumulation of delays make it just not sustainable. But as I said, the basic bread and butter of an airline, which is making sure the passenger, the aircraft, the crew, the meal, the bags are in place, I think this has become more or less stable, and all airlines do it very well.
For us, it's, as my colleague said, it is a given, it's a standard, all of those chain is done. However, when you look at weather, something uncontrollable, weather, risk zone or unrest zone, especially the area we are in Africa. So we think usually Europe, we have a war here or a war there. In Africa, we had 2023, 2024, 3 to 4 airspaces closed during flights.
You, of course, have the same issue, I mean, with Ukraine
Yes.
and with Russia. Now, the conflict, managing that operationally, I mean, we're unfortunately and deeply regretfully, we're several years into it, so you've got the hang of it by now. But it's, all of a sudden it's the Middle East, and suddenly Israel becomes a difficult area. Can you get in and out of Ben Gurion? Can you go do that? How much of your time is spent on those sort of issues?
It takes a lot of my time, to be honest, especially because, at our border there is a war in Ukraine. Russian, Belarus, and Ukrainian airspaces are closed, so we need to overfly those airspaces. And as you said, the Israel now is also an issue for us. So you may say that's also our daily concern, to do those security risk assessments.
I think that one of the most important roles of the CEO is guaranteeing safety of the operation, right? When there is a conflict zone, we just need to deal with what's given to us. And we just need to manage, follow the NOTAMs to avoid the conflict zones, and do what is needed to continue providing safe operation.
But it's quite a lot. I mean, I've got personal experience of this. I was supposed to fly out from here.
I cancelled your flight.
Oh, you did? You cancelled my flight?
I did, I know.
I don't worry, I don't blame you personally, because it's Tashkent, and I was so pleased. I thought I got the perfect flight.
Yeah.
It left at the right time, was direct to Tashkent. I thought, this is, but what's interesting is that I had to find another flight, but from your point of view, you've now got to unwind the entire transaction. Mm-hmm. Operationally, you've not only got to cancel the flight, you've got to deal with me, you've got to pay me back my money. All of those sort of things, it shows the complexity of the operation.
Yeah, it does. And it's unfortunate that, again, conflict zones generate disruption, generate passenger inconvenience, generates extra cost, right? For instance, we have one of the most modern fleets. We go to painstaking detail in being efficient in how we operate the aircraft, and now and then there is a conflict zone and you have to add 30 minutes of flight, which would generate a lot more CO2 emissions. So it's this kind of personal frustration that conflict zones basically decrease the efficiency of the aviation system.
One of the things I want to just touch on is, where do you stand? I mean, you're obviously at the highest level of the C-suite, obviously, but within all the others, the chief financial, the chief strategy, chief marketing, chief technical, how do you think the chief operating officer is viewed?
The guy that never adds value but can ruin everything. Because if things go well, oh, fantastic network design, fantastic ancillary management. If there are delays, you guys in operations don't know what you do. This is our role, to keep the house running.
It's the guy, when it's running smooth, he is perfect. When something small happens, all the fingers are pointed to. And he is the mistaken guy at the time. So
why didn't you foresee that? Why didn't you do that? Do you know how much that's cost me? If only you'd seen that. What were you thinking?
Because that's the point where Dorota was saying. We learn from the previous things, and now we're using systems. We're using the AI to help us a lot for the future to see. Because whatever we do on the legacy way, it's not like the AI, the prediction of the AI. So we're trying to use the AI more. We're trying to use the predictions more to predict what is coming, including weather, including even the unrest situations around, and specifically in the area I'm operating. We're operating in Africa. It just happened the other day, flying to Europe, and Niger, airspace is closed, Libya is closed, and Sudan is closed, and the aircraft is in the air. And decision has to be made now for them to divert. So it is something you need to be aware of.
Is that something that would be brought to your attention?
Yes.
Even though the decision will have been,
Yes.
or may have been taken operationally by chief pilots and route planning and all of those sort of people, they will have dealt with the logistics, but somebody will have called you up and say, George, you need to know X, Y, Z has happened, and therefore.
Yes, that's something I need to intervene with. We need to intervene with something like this because it has a lot of consequence on in the other end of the flight as well. When the aircraft arrives, it arrives late and it diverts somewhere else. We have to get the permits. We have to be involved in this.
How do you think the COO is viewed?
Costs and trouble. And as George said, if everything goes smoothly, it's okay, it's fine. But you know, I think it's a matter of building a culture in your organization and to you know, showing people how important and complex it is, and we try to do it.
But I guess when you walk into the CEO's office, does he or she think, oh God, all right, what crap are you about to dump on my desk now?
I don't believe so.
Not really, but you know, you walk into the office of the CEO. He knows there is something major, and we need to sit together and find a solution. He's a solution.
It's a very diplomatic way of saying the same thing
Yeah.
that I just said.
I think the role of the CEO is a challenging one. I think that as time passes by and the basics are stable, more focus is put on us, expecting us to help plan what's coming in the next 5 years, right? For instance, in my day-to-day, I don't touch the operation. They don't even let me get into operations control center, right? Though we all like to get into the day-to-day of the detail, right? The work is what's going to happen next year, what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And in that longer-term planning, more strategic operations planning, if you want, the relationship with the other key elements of the company, particularly the CEO and the CFO, are very critical. Because in the end, achieving cost leadership is done through efficiency and through, you know, this perfect coordination between what finance needs and what operations deliver. Cost efficiency is not delivered on a paper, it's delivered in everyday's operation.
That's a fascinating aspect of the job, particularly as each of your airlines in your individual ways are going over some form of transition, whether it's legacy to alliances to to what your role is, to each of you is transforming in quite, I mean, Lot, for example, is transforming in quite dramatic ways. And taking what Isidre has just said, the role that you will play operationally in bringing that forward is very, it's a change. It's not the nuts and bolts of today. It's about what you're going to do in 2-3 years.
We are growing significantly over last year. So me and my department, we basically secure the production resources. If we don't do it, there will be no growth. There will be no strategic plans and strategic decision taking. So I think the role of COO is perceived as an important role. And in LOT, we have good partnership with the CEO. There is 2 of us in a board at the moment, so we are, you know, there's no other way. But I think the culture in the company is that we are perceived as important and needed.
Right, but the point I think I'm getting to is, if you take IndiGo, the dramatic shift that you're undergoing over the next 5 to 10 years with international longer haul flying, it will change the operational nature of the aircraft, of the airline dramatically.
Yes, it does, because it's evolving. It's getting from a very successful domestically based LCC to an airline that today has 30% of the ASKs in international that we ambition to get much farther. So the model has to be adjusted. The model has to be evolved. And one of the problems that we're having today in aviation is that lead times for everything are very, very long. So everything that is not planned for the next 5 years, we're already late.
This is the strategy is set by the CEO and the board for moving forward, and the implementer of this transformation and this strategy is the COO. He's the one to take this, make it into action, put it in place. And usually it is the COO who is the heart of this, the dynamic heart of the organization, to implement whatever strategy is set. Either it's like what Sid said, or any different one.
And at the same time, you're dealing with both sides. You're dealing with today's issues, but at the same time, what's going to come next in the future. That's quite tricky.
It is, because, you know, given the example, as I said, we are growing, we are buying new aircraft, we are taking 13 MAXs next year, and I need to secure crews for that. So I need to overstaff for some time, right? Because of the length of the pilot training, I will not, to be ready for the summer season next year, I have already started the training. So they are not happy because they are not flying too many hours, and they are paid by the hour. Not the whole salary, but the big part of their salary is the hour driven. So you also need to manage this, you know, social aspect of the operations. So they don't go to the other airline, and I need to find more, to train more, to be ready for the next summer season.
To stop them poaching them. It's fascinating to watch the 3 of you, the dynamic. I can see in your faces, as one of you is saying something, the other's thinking, yep. There's a wry smile of, yep, we've got that. Glad to see that she's suffering as well. Or I've got that problem over there. You've all got the same.
Shared pain gives consolation, no, as they say. And for good or bad, in the end, an airline is mostly operations. 90+% of the people that work in an airline report to the CEO. And as such, we have to balance the needs of, I want to sell these tickets, I want to do this program. We're basically brokers of the resources. This is what the network wants to do, this is where we want to fly, this is how we want to do it, and these are the resources available. And our role is to make sure that we match everything.
Do you sometimes, you may not say it out loud, but to either the chief marketing or to whatever it is, somebody who's come up with some new service on board, or somebody who scratched themselves and think, why don't we do it? And you think to yourself, are you barking mad? Have you any idea how difficult this is going to be? Looks great on paper, it's not going to work in reality.
Yes. it happens, and I think it happens with all my colleagues as well. It's something common in all the airlines that they take the decision is made, and let's put this new service in place, and okay, and I get to see it. This is impossible because of the numbers we have on board, because we're trying to fly with a minimum crew. That means I will add some more. My cost will increase. So you're trying to balance this. And that's what I say about the COO. He's running on a very thin line, in a zigzag of cost, and the other side is safety and security. So commercial side and the safety side.
You're all nodding at that.
Yeah, I think that is part of this transversal ecosystem of what's the value chain, and everyone plays its part, and in the end, it's finding the right balance.
Yeah.
I want to just finish. Do COOs make good CEOs, do you think? Because one's always, by the time you do the sort of the CEO, I'm always interested as what the CEO did before. And one of you was saying earlier that there tends to be a difference in North America where they may come more from the financial, the CFO suite, or the balance sheet side versus elsewhere where they may come from the operational side. So, first blunt question. Would you all like, to, not at an airline, do you all aspire to be a CEO?
I am the CEO of my area. I am the CEO of operations, and obviously I think that you need to have a strong understanding of 90% of the company to be able to lead effectively the remaining of the company.
Do you think COOs make good CEOs of the group?
The best ones. No question asked.
It depends definitely on the approach. However, yes, definitely they work. We have both examples. CFOs made a very, very good and excellent CEOs, and COOs made a very good and excellent CEO. We have a good example with IndiGo. He's COO before, and he became a CEO, and he's done a very good job.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm thinking. I think it's possible. I think it's possible that the COO would be a great CEO. But for me, you know, I perceive us as a doers. We do think and we operate at all the time. For CEO, I see the additional role as a representative role for the company and some more, you know, networking, social things, no more events. That's something that I think would, yes, but it's possible. But if I would be a good CEO, maybe.
Would you like to?
Not yet, I think. I'm not done as COO yet. I have some more things to do.
You have more things to do.
Yeah.
Final question then. What's today? Today's Tuesday, correct? Tuesday,
Yes.
whatever it is of the 3rd of June. You're all going to have your morning calls. Some of you may have already had them. You've probably had your morning call already there. What's the #1 issue in your airline today? Today, no, I don't want some macro, long-range thing. I want to know what's pissing you off today.
I don't know, because I don't run the day-to-day of my airline. I run the future. Day-to-day is going to be, obviously I know, but it's going to be weather-related, diversions, the usual things.
It's few delays where I read the reports. That's the few delays only I had to go through, but nothing major for today.
Peaceful day, to be honest. Nothing happened yet, and the first wave was on time today.
The first wave was on time?
Yes.
So if the first wave was on time, you stand a reasonable chance of the rest of the day going well.
Yes, that's what I hope for.
We'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel.
Thank you very much.
You.